Hi, and welcome to the workshop for the analytical research paper for your study abroad for international area studies. These slides are available through your instructor, and the instructor has also provided you a link to this recording. So let's just jump in, okay? This is who I am. I'm Allison Freyberg. I teach writing and communication, critical thinking, consulting, and the Writing Lounge webinar series, and I'm also the Associate Director of International Programs, so I might actually be your faculty leader on the trip you're taking. I hope I am. And you can usually, these are the usual ways you can find me. You can find, there's links actually in this presentation to Writing Lounge or writing lectures as well. And you can always find out more about me or contact me through email. Okay? Let's jump in. So you have an analytical research paper that you need to do for your study abroad course, in addition to the travel learning journal, which there's also a recording and slides for. Let's talk about the assignment a little bit. Now, these are not, obviously, these are terrible slides. They're really meant to be a learning guide for you. They're meant to take the place of a big handout. So they're just done in slide form. Okay, so this is the actual assignment. It's an analytical research paper, and depending on whether or not you're taking it for your capstone, it will have different configurations. But essentially, you need to analyze a business, an industry, a function, an issue within the national and international contexts you're going to study. You need to do more than just describe or summarize an industry. You need to figure something out. You can read it. It's also in your syllabus. It's probably on your learning management system site, whether that's Moodle or Canvas at this point. And uh, you can go through things in depth with your instructor, but I just want to really put forth that you're trying to figure something out that you don't already know with respect to the places you're going and an industry you're interested in. Okay, you are expected to incorporate elements from your pre-departure classes, your classwork, your readings, if you've done scrambles, you've done all sorts of work focusing on the locations you'll be traveling to. So you are expected to bring that in. You're also expected to bring in knowledge from your previous courses and your professional experience. Right? It's much more of a holistic project. Okay. If you are doing the capstone, then that research paper has to be a little incorporate a different element because a capstone is meant to be an integrative experience. So what you'll need to do is demonstrate that you're integrating theories and concepts and knowledge gained from at least 3 of the courses you've taken in your program, and use them to help you figure out whatever analysis you're doing. Okay? I highly recommend you talk to your instructor to make sure you know which is which and what things are important, because your instructor might have a different take on this assignment as well, or different configurations for it. However, I think that for any major writing assignment, it's really good to take a moment and just sift through the assignment itself. We've received so many assignments in our academic days. We're like, okay, I just have to write a paper. No, 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 no. What are the elements of the paper that's important? And here are some questions that I encourage you to consider, and I encourage you to consider as a class that you talk about this. Number 1, what are the important details? What words and concepts in the prompt need to be defined? Are you supposed to summarize, evaluate, analyze? What do those things mean? What adjustments do you need to make? What can you reasonably do before departure? What will you especially look for while you're traveling? And what do you expect to do on the paper after you return? Okay. I encourage you to work with each other and really try to generate some responses to these questions. Spend some time on the actual assignment rather than on simply getting it done. Okay, here's some general tips. Number one, think about why you chose to participate in this study abroad. The more meaningful you can make these assignments for yourself, the more successful you're going to be. It's going to be much less of a slog to get through this. Okay. What motivated you to study abroad? Think about this. Yeah, of course you wanted to go to those places, but it's more than that. You can go to those places. You just have to book an airline ticket. What about studying abroad? What about this travel that is intriguing you in terms of business, management, industry, leadership? Try to think about that. Number two, be motivated by curiosity. What are you curious about? If you can move from that space, again, your success level is going to be much higher than if you're just doing this as a chore. Please, number three, rely, we're going to spend a little more time talking about this, rely on sound resources and know why you're incorporating them. If all you're doing is finding stuff off Google and popular sites, you're not doing what needs to happen in a research paper at either the graduate level or the upper division undergraduate level. So if you want to find peer-reviewed sources, which you should want to do, you can click here and it'll take you right to the that section of the business research guide in the library, in the Armacost library resources. Same if you want to find company and industry research, you just click here. And again, these are live links in the PDF of these slides. Number four, get proficient with real research before you go abroad. Take some time before we travel to get comfortable in those databases if you aren't already, with how to find company and industry research, the resources that are going to be on your learning management site that your instructor has prepared for you, and the peer-reviewed sources in the library. If you can get comfortable searching and finding sources before you go, things will be a lot easier for you during travel and after you return. Number five, ensure that your limited draft is complete. Now, before you go, obviously, your draft is going to be limited. It's going to be, you know, depending on your instructor's framing, it's either going to be a complete draft or it's going to have sections you need to have done. Do what the instructor asks, please, because then the instructor can give you good feedback. And then you can test out your ideas when you're abroad. If you've just thrown together some sort of draft to fulfill the requirement, you're going to be in a really bad place after you return because there's going to be a lot of work to do and life is going to catch up with you and it's going to be hard to get it done. Number six, build a question inventory and a research focus before you travel. It's hard to do all this travel, to visit all these businesses, and try to be thinking of questions at the same time. You're going to learn about the companies you're going to visit. You're going to develop a research focus through your limited draft before we go. So take some time to think about questions you might like to ask during our visits. Number seven, while you're abroad, go ahead and keep a separate section of your notebook that focuses on your research topic. You're going to have a notebook or you're going to have notes that you're going to use for your travel journal. Keep a separate one or a separate section that focuses only on your research so you're not filtering through 50 different pages trying to find the ideas about the research paper that you had on day 7 when you were visiting Ebenezer's marketing company. If you keep a separate spot for it, it'll grow and then you'll be able to reflect on it as you're going along. And please, Number 8, be responsive to your faculty leader's feedback on your draft. We are reviewing your draft and giving you feedbacks that we think can guide you towards successful results. So it really is important to take that into consideration and talk to your faculty member. You're going to be traveling for 8 to 10 days, 12 days with your faculty member. Go have a coffee, go have a beverage, eat some lunch together, and talk about your paper. Okay, you're going to be traveling between places on bus and train. Have a conversation with your faculty member about your research paper. Number 9, do remember to incorporate information and insights gained while you were abroad into the final essay. Now that sounds obvious. Of course you're going to bring new knowledge that you've gained on the trip into your paper. But you'll be surprised what happens is when you get back, you have the travel journal and the research paper to submit, usually about 3 weeks after travel. Everything's catching up with you. Everything that you've let go for a couple of weeks to have this amazing experience is all catching up with you. You've got jet lag, and it's amazing how easy it is to just maybe add a paragraph or two to your draft and call it a day. Those don't end up being good papers at all. Okay, the whole point is to have the experience and see how it changes your thinking, see how it tests your thinking. Okay, so make sure you're bringing those experiences into your paper. It's not just about, an analytical research essay isn't just about all the research you found before you left. It's also about your experience. Otherwise, why do this? Okay, so those are some general recommendations. Now, I have 8 specific recommendations for the research essay with some techniques and follow-up and strategies for you to look at. Okay, recommendation number 1, please be specific. Here's some famous last words. The bigger my topic, the longer my paper will be. I see this all the time. If I just talk about a really big topic, I'll have tons to say. You won't. You'll have really superficial things to say about a lot of different stuff, and there's no insight gained from that. There's no real analysis. It's usually just a bunch of topics listed. Okay? Try to say more about less. Be as specific as you can. I'll have some links for you to focus on how to be specific. Really narrow the focus of your essay. Talk to your instructor and see how you can do that. Follow up to that. You can test your title if you want. I mean, again, famous last words, it's just a title, who cares? Everyone cares, because most of the time that's all that people read in your professional life. They'll read your subject line, they'll read the title of the proposal, maybe a paragraph, whatever you're doing. Your title orients your reader, so it's important to orient them correctly. And if you can do that by incorporating specifics, you're going to be helping out your case a lot. Okay. So what I did here, and maybe you should chat about these in class. I'll give you a basic rundown. Here's some titles I just made up. And I'll tell you right now, title number 1, Business in Italy, that's terrible. Business is too broad. Now, yeah, you're focusing on a country. Okay, great. Business, there's a million different kinds of businesses. This is going to be a terrible paper that just talks vaguely about a bunch of businesses in Italy, if that. Here's another one, Women in Leadership in Asia. Again, way too broad. Which women? What kind of leadership positions? Where in Asia? Be specific. How about this one? Brew pub location analysis in Central Europe? I'm intrigued. Very specific. We're talking about a specific industry. We're actually talking about something very, very specific. It's going to be a location analysis, so where to put a brew pub. Now, Central Europe is kind of broad, but I know, for example, that this actually was a student who was going on a Central Europe program with us, and they took 3 cities and they tried to figure out which of the cities that we were going to, and they figured out which was the best location to open a brew pub if that's what they wanted to do. Very good. I have some good signaling here in the title. Number 4, youth employment in Europe. Again, we're falling back off into the vague category. You know, what do we mean by youth? Can mean different things in different countries. How can we how can we think about the categories of youth? Employment, all kinds of employment? What kind of employment are we talking about? Pick an industry. And again, Europe is very, very broad. Focus on the countries you're visiting, and even better, focus on cities. See what you can do in terms of getting specific. How about this one? Closing the digital skills gap in Spain. I'm intrigued. I'm looking at a specific industry, or I'm not an industry, I'm looking at a specific issue. There's a digital skills gap. I'm looking at it in a specific country, Spain, and I'm trying to figure out how to close that gap. I'm trying to figure out how to do something. I'm intrigued. How about number 6? Prospects for blockchain in South Africa, Cape Town or Johannesburg? There, I'm looking at a specific industry. I'm looking at a specific place. And again, I'm trying to do a location analysis. Where is this going to work best and why? That's pretty interesting. So I hope you can see the differences between, say, 1 and 2, and then we start getting 3, 5, and 6 as being much more specific. Try to hone in and get specific. Recommendation 2, don't start with a thesis. Don't start with your claim. I'm talking about the experience of writing the paper. Okay. Everyone always tells you when you're writing a paper, the process starts with a thesis, right? Decide on your thesis, go find sources that support your thesis or back it up, and then incorporate those sources and then see your thesis is right. Okay, that is a terrible way of going about writing an analytical research paper, because all we're doing there is coming up with something out of our heads or something we already believe. We're going to find a bunch of sources that back up what we already believe and validate it. And then we're going to pretend that that's discovered something or revealed something. No, it's a waste of everybody's time. I really worry when I hear students come up to me and say, I want to prove X. We can all prove. You're going to find sources that back up what you believe. That's usually not a problem. But what happens is there's no curiosity, there's no investigation, there's no discovery. And a really good analysis seeks to figure something out. And you can't do that if you're starting your whole process with a decision. I've decided X, and I'm going to do everything I can to prove X. That is a terrible place to be. Instead, what I'll invite you to do is, you want the topic, right? Closing the skills gap in Spain, the digital skills gap in Spain. It's an interesting topic. Next step is not to come up with an answer. The next step is to come up with a question. How are you going to do this? What is the best way to close that digital skills gap? And then what you do, then everything that you're motivated by, everything that that encourages your actions and your study and your exploration is about trying to answer that question. So don't start with a thesis. Work on a question. that you want your research essay to answer. Tell you that'll help you a lot with writer's block as well. And this one's kind of linked to it. You're always told, again, start with a thesis and then make an outline, right? Well, how can you make an outline at the beginning of the process? You don't know what's going into it. So if you really do like outlines, please think of them as living, ever-changing entities. Okay? What you say should determine how you say it, not the other way around. So investigate, imagine, think, study, research, then organize. And if you want techniques to be more persuasive in your organization, I have 2 techniques for you. One is called a post-draft summary chart. You make this, it's an outline, but you make it after you've done a full draft. So when you hand in your limited draft to the instructor, that's a good time to do a post-draft summary chart because you already have a draft and then you can really focus on organizing it. So what you do is you make one of these charts and you number all your paragraphs, and then in this box you write down what's the point of that paragraph. If there's 3 points, you put it in there. If there's no point, you put a question mark. If there's 2 points, you put them in there. Okay? And you make a chart, you make a map of your draft as it exists. Then you can analyze the map instead of trying to analyze 15 pages of a paper. You can analyze the map, which is on one page, and realize, hey, you know what? Paragraph 3 has 2 ideas in it. I need to separate them out and give each idea space to grow. Maybe you recognize that paragraph 4 really has a lot more to do with paragraph 7 and they should be closer together, maybe next to each other. Maybe you realize that there's a big gap between paragraph 5 and paragraph 6 and you actually need another paragraph between them to make it make sense. These are things you can't see when you're trying to look at 10 to 15 pages of a draft, but you can see if it's all on one page. And it's a nice way to really work on organization and content-driven organization after you've drafted. Now, if you're not a chart person, try a Post-it version of this, where every idea from your draft, and you have to have written your draft already, but every idea from your draft gets written on a Post-it, its own Post-it. So if paragraph 3 had 3 ideas, then you write 3 Post-its, okay? And then you forget about your draft. You do this for your whole draft so that you have a collection of Post-its on the wall or on a desk or somewhere, and you then have all the ideas and then you put them in an order that makes sense. Then you organize your Post-its so your organization makes sense, it's logical, it flows, ideas grow out of each other. Same idea as that post-draft summary chart, but just a different tactile experience of it. Okay, so I invite you to try both of those techniques. Both of those are meant to be done after you draft. Recommendation number 4. Understand what analysis really means. You've all written a bunch of research papers, but how many of them were really analytical? I like to explain analysis this way. You have to demonstrate understanding of a context or concept, and then you have to contribute to the existing conversation about that context or concept in some meaningful way. Show you understand the conversations about this topic that have come before you, and find a way to contribute to that conversation. That's analysis. Know what's come before you, find a way to contribute. Understanding plus contribution equals analysis. That's hard to do. So what I have for you here is a technique that can help you do that. I call it the CKOM inventory method. And again, this is meant to be done after drafting. And what you do is you go through your paper and you label anything that's kind of common knowledge, anything that 8 out of 10 people would know, just label it CK. Anything that's somebody else's idea, put an O beside it. And then anything that really is your idea that you didn't get from somewhere else and that isn't common knowledge, give it an M. Okay. Now, when you think about it, you can really do an inventory. And here, let's say there's 4 papers. Okay. So you do your inventory, and let's say you've done paper A, which has, as it turns out, 53 sentences that are common knowledge, 8 sentences that are other people's ideas, and 7 sentences that are yours. Is that going to be a good analytical paper? No, that's completely pointless because almost all of this everybody already knew anyway. Why are you writing it? It's common knowledge. You have bluffed your way through this paper. You know it. Everybody knows it. We've all written these, by the way. And I know it because I've written them as well. Okay, so you want to stay away from something that's all common knowledge. Let's look at paper B. Okay, we got our common knowledge under control here. Maybe there's just a little throat clearing and stuff and little common knowledge. 51 sentences are somebody else's idea. They're from sources. That's great. This person did research, right? Absolutely. Problem comes here when there's only 9 sentences that have my ideas in them. Because this is a summary mostly. And I know this paper. This is the paper we see most often. There's a little common knowledge, lots and lots of incorporating of research, paraphrasing, quoting, tables, all sorts of things. And then usually the last page and a half is here's what I think. That's not an analysis, okay? That is a summary of other people's ideas and a little page and a half of what you think at the end. You're not joining the conversation in any way, right? You're not, if you were at a conference focused on the topic and all you did was regurgitate what other people said, there's no place for you, right? This needs to be a higher number here, higher quotient. What about this one? Paper C. Okay, we've got 8 sentences of common knowledge. We've got 8 sentences that incorporate somebody else's idea, and 49 sentences that are me, 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 me. Is this what we're going for in a good analysis? Nope. That's simply a rant. Here's an introduction, here's a couple of paragraphs of what other people said, and here's 10 pages of me just going off on the subject. All right, that's not a good conversation, right? Remember, we use that metaphor of good analysis being a combination of understanding what other people have said before you and finding a way to contribute to that. What about paper D? A little bit of common knowledge, and we've got about 50%, a little, and 50% of O's and M's. That's a pretty good conversation. That's an analysis. The writer has really tried to contribute, but not at the expense of the conversations that have come before, in a way that really engages a conversation, that really analyzes as they go along, that really has something to say, but not out of context of what everybody else has said. So this is a great little test to make sure you're kind of hitting that nice little Goldilocks zone for analysis. Now these can change a little bit, of course, you know, but the idea is you want to stay away from A, B, and C, and you want to stay in that nice little maybe 60-40, 40-60, 50-50 kind of zone for a really good analysis. You have to be able to contribute and you have to be able to demonstrate understanding on the topic that you've chosen. CKOM. There it is. All right, recommendation number 5, incorporate meaningful actual research. And here's the famous last words, you can Google anything, or if it's not on Google, it's not in my paper. Okay, those are not good research papers, right? It's even in the title, you're writing a research paper. Google is a search engine, it's not a research engine. Okay, when you're Googling something, you're just finding stuff. You're not doing research. And you need to be able to use peer-reviewed sources and find real company and industry research. And you have amazing access to these. And the links are right here again that you can go find stuff. So if you notice that your research paper is full of stuff from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Business Insider, Forbes, US News and World Report, basically just stuff you can find through a Google search, you are not doing what needs to happen. You are doing lousy research. Okay, you have access to all this stuff. Go ahead, your instructor will show you if you're unfamiliar with this stuff and this technique, your instructor will show you. So please do not be shy. Get comfortable finding peer-reviewed sources and company and industry research through these important databases before you travel. Recommendation number 6. Use sources to begin, not end analysis. And it's sometimes hard to get our heads around, but the idea is you don't want to just have an idea, find a source that backs it up, shove it in there and stop conversation, right? Because that's when you get those papers that are all other people's ideas and none of you. When you are looking for sources, you're trying to analyze them. You're trying to talk to them in a way. Okay, so when you're integrating research, familiarize yourself with what's been said about the concept or the situation. Show you know what others have said and carve out that space to contribute to the conversation. Research isn't about finding sources that validate what you already believe. It's about working with sources and talking to sources and considering them in ways that will help you answer your research question. It's a really different energy there. Also part of using those sources, I do recommend Rosenwasser and Stevens' Writing Analytically. I think it's a great book for those of you in the undergraduate program in the School of Business and Society. You've come across the Rosenwasser and Stevens book, and it has wonderful strategies for helping you think about sources in a conversation metaphor, that you're going to be talking to these sources. You're not just going to be grabbing them and dumping them into your work and think that they're doing the work for you, because they're not. It's about that conversation metaphor. Now, if you want, you can click on this link here and it will take you to a lecture of mine on how to do this. And I call it quote burgers or source burgers. And anytime you're bringing data in or quotes or paraphrase, anytime you're bringing in information from elsewhere, you need to build a burger from it. And that sounds kind of silly, and it's meant to be. But if you want, you go ahead and click on that and you have a short lecture on how to do this stuff right over here that Rosenwasser and Stephen asked us to do. Recommendation number 7, craft clear sentences, obviously, but you will be amazed. This is what I see a lot. These kinds of sentiments, or at least the effects of this kind of thinking. If I use really big words, I'll sound smarter, more academic, and more professional. No, you just sound like you're trying to be academic. it meaning gets lost in so many ways when we fill it with jargon and cliches and business speak and all that kind of stuff. Be clear. I know when I'm trying to really communicate a message, then I'm making sure I'm getting to the right word and I'm getting to it cleanly and precisely. If you want to look at a short lecture on how to cut waste, cut that wordiness, go ahead and you click right here. And now you're all worried because you're like, wait, because then I'm going to cut words and then my paper's going to be too short. But that's okay, because what I have is a little lecture over here for you that are techniques to add meaning, right? So that all your words that you're using are actually doing work. You know when you're just filling up the page. What would happen if every word was meaningful? That's what these two techniques will help you do. And recommendation number 8 is you want to assure the quality of your work. When you get down to the end of the process, you want to make sure style, mechanics, grammar, documentation, you want to make sure all those things are correct so that no one has a reason to dismiss your work. Now, is it fair that someone will dismiss your work from a bunch of typos? No, but they're going to do it. Make sure you don't give people an excuse. So here's again a little workshop on APA formatting essentials, APA in-text, APA references, and this is directly from the APA style page, which is a fantastic. They revised it last year. It's absolutely fantastic. I do a little review of grammar, complete with jokes, so it's not quite as dreadful as one would think. And then the other person I really, really like on grammar stuff is Grammar Girl. She has a podcast, she has a website, she has a blog. Podcast is amazing, and I'd really recommend. So each of these sources are here for you. I hope you'll take advantage of them. Also, for any of those lectures, there are slides, obviously, and if you want them, just let me know, and I'll get them to you. Okay. Now, also for number 8, I'm a big fan of checklists. So here's a checklist. I'm not going to read through it. You'll have these slides and you can read through them. But this is a checklist focused on APA. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff, but you just make sure you've got that stuff covered. Make sure you've eliminated your errors. And then finally, here's a nice one for quality assurance in terms of style, form, and documentation matters that you can look at here. Another checklist for you to look at. Okay, help you again after you're really ready to submit this paper. Don't look at these checklists until you're like, okay, I am almost ready. Now I just got to make sure, like every the punctuation's right and all that kind of stuff. It happens at the end of your process, but it needs to happen. All right. This is, oh, by the way, this is a view from a friend's apartment in Trieste, Italy. She has a rooftop apartment. Okay, here's a recap. When you're looking at the assignment, take time to review what's being asked of you. Make sure you understand, work with your instructor, talk with each other, and make sure what you're planning to do is what's being requested of you. And we have the general tips that we went through. And we have the 8 recommendations that are very specific, and most of them have links to them where you can do further study or further practice and exercises on that kind of stuff. Okay? And that concludes our analytical research essay workshop. If I am not traveling with you, I hope you have an awesome time, and I want to hear all about it. even if I'm not traveling with you. And if you are traveling with me, then I can't wait to get going.